Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Pante. Para Panyo. So in Buddhism, we don't believe in anything like luck. We believe in cause and effect. So if someone is particularly lucky in their life, it means that in past lives they have done many good deeds, they have generated many positive karmas or blessings, and those are being expressed in this present life. However, one should not take this as a reason for complacency. We should make use of our blessings to do more and more good deeds limitlessly. All kinds of good deeds. Whatever appears to be big can also be small. Whatever appears to be big can also be small. The meaning is that it's not ultimately one particular way. Our view may be one particular way, but it is of the utmost importance that we're open to views besides our own, because there are views besides our own. And if we aren't open to them, we have to fight against them, or we will feel very lonely. So, in my tradition, I practice to be open to all kinds of different views, not just one view. Not just viewing things one particular way. It might seem a certain way at a certain time, but it's not necessarily that way just because I think that it is. And I really try to live through that view. Monks. A statement endowed with 5 factors is well-spoken, not ill-spoken. It is blameless and unfaulted by knowledgeable people. Which 5? It is spoken at the right time. It is spoken in truth. It is spoken affectionately. It is spoken beneficially. It is spoken with a mind of goodwill. Concerning the good deeds that we can do as people concerned with mindfulness or the path to the end of suffering, mainly 2 principles to make use of. Firstly, it is to give what is valuable, what is precious. That may be your possessions, that may be your skilled time, that may be kindness. If you can notice what is valuable to you, and you can donate that, or you can offer that, or you can share that, we can say that is a good deed. Finding an organization or a group to volunteer with, finding a monk to feed, giving a few bucks to someone in need. And from the Buddhist view, we consider that it's actually quite worthwhile and valuable to practice generosity concerned with the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the Buddha, so that our generosity is connected to the path to enlightenment. We kind of invest ourselves in that way, towards affiliation with the path and those practicing the path and the places where the path is emphasized. The second principle is concerned with our conduct, so a lot of it is what we don't do. So in Buddhism we have 5 precepts for everyone. Don't kill, even bugs. Don't steal, or even take what is not freely offered. Don't lie or speak harshly. Don't commit sexual misconduct, which means being very careful and mindful about anything that has connection to sexual energy. And lastly, don't intoxicate the mind. You can also view these in a positive light, like a positive perspective, such as protect life or speak kindly at all times. If we train in that way, there will be powerful side effect that supports deepening our meditation practice. Right now we're in California, and we will go to India in the next month, so you could meet us there if you wanted to. If we have any...
Out mode.
If we have any...
Studio mode.
Hello? Hello?
Monster mode.
Hello?
Chant mode.
Hello?
Original mode.
Hello? Hello? If you have any questions on YouTube, you can also ask them. No, it's possible, but extremely unlikely to make much success on the spiritual path
Host mode.
if we
Singer mode.
are not
Up mode.
connected to people and communities and teachers more and more that are experienced in the same ways of development. So actually the stepping stones for the spiritual path are less and less about seeking something that we can get ourselves, and more about seeking how to let go of the idea of getting something for ourselves. And it's quite necessary to have community support and high-minded teachers to be able to do that. It is really difficult to accept that most of our cognition, most of our mental abilities may in fact be based in untruth. It is also really difficult to accept that our life may not be the way that we want it to be, ever. And the solution to these difficulties is to learn how to accept what is already. Because through that we can learn to develop our compassion, to develop our kindness, to develop our intention to help others, and then these difficult quandaries will just be food for the fire of doing more good deeds, helping others, taking care of our own heart and mind, taking care of the heart and mind of others, and taking care of the heart and mind of our precious Mother Earth. The biggest teaching I can give about relationships is that they should be based in generosity and mutual commitment to freedom. As much as there is a transactional quality to our relationship, there is the positive and negative side of it. So, if we can be more willing to talk about the relationship being based in non-transactional generosity rather than the feeling, quote unquote, of love, we will avoid a lot of unskillful relationship dynamics and also sometimes disappointingly so, or at least it seems like that, unskillful relationships. Okay, let's see. Um, how can we dedicate the merits of meditation to all beings? By being more generous with mindfulness and detachment, and by understanding that the meditation experience supports us to do more of what we should do and to do less of what we shouldn't do. And in understanding that we are not separate from everything, vowing to continue deepening our practice of doing the good, of not doing the bad, and purifying the mind. And we can make that vow not only concerned with our personal success or personal feeling, but in terms of that body and mind being for all, for everyone. And slowly we can start to move towards living that way as well in a practical sense. Like becoming a monk or a nun, or volunteering at an organization to help others. Oh, great, Gavin. So Buddhism is a practice. I was talking about this with my grandmother a couple days ago. It's a way of being with life. It's a way of being with the body and the mind moment by moment. The Buddha is not a replacement for Jesus. The Buddha was a man who became enlightened, and his image represents enlightenment or peace on earth, as Jesus also represents. So you can have as active a relationship as you like with Jesus, with Christ, and then you can practice generosity more, practice precepts more, practice cultivating meditation more, and you can also listen to Dhamma talks. Gavin, if you're open enough to let Jesus be in your heart rather than being in your mind, because that's really where Jesus belongs, is in our heart, then you can listen to Dhamma talks more and just see for yourself if there's anything here that takes you away from a relationship with God or a relationship with Christ, right? And I'm sure that I'm sure you won't find that. Listen to Thich Nhat Hanh, listen to Ajahn Brahm, some of the teachers that we have on our website, and it can support you to be a better Christian. It's not about becoming a Buddhist. It's about making use of the Buddhist teachings and practices to help you be a better Christian. Okay? Oh, suffering is not, you can't enjoy suffering. If you're enjoying it, it's not suffering. So this is just kind of like a mind trick. If you're enjoying it, if it's making you feel satisfied, then it's not suffering, right? To you. But the suffering is not just painful or pleasurable experiences. It's this underlying feeling of never being satisfied. So the ending of suffering is there's nothing more to get. There's nothing more to seek after. There's no work to be done. You don't have to do anything. It's just freedom. And a lot of times the people who talk like that, like they enjoy chaos or they enjoy suffering, they're actually talking about the conditions that they're in. And the Buddhist practice teaches us to actually detach from our conditions and to abandon our conditions. So what if you like chaos, then that's not chaotic to you. It's comfortable for you. It's stable for you. If you like suffering, then that's not suffering for you. That's pleasant. That's likable. It's enjoyable. Suffering is not likable or enjoyable. The same with chaos, because real chaos concerned with the mind would be, some kind of complete schizophrenia. Or chaos concerned with the body would be like complex cancers in the body. So once again, it comes back to arrogance, it comes back to pride, it comes back to being way too selfish. And once again, Gavin, it's not a matter of high-minded Buddhist philosophy. It's a matter of giving. It's a matter of listening to talks from real teachers, not making up our own ideas about Buddhism. It's a matter of living ethically, and it's a matter of training the mind in prayer. So this is what Buddhism is about. We don't get to just kind of look at a few books or come across a few ideas related to Buddhism and then consider that we know what Buddhism is. That's not a very humble way of looking at it. And I think that if Jesus embodies anything, Jesus embodies the path of effort and the path of diligence to be compassionate, to be kind, to be forgiving, to be loving. Well, you have to test that GMCG. So you have certain conditions you're used to that you're comfortable with, certain chaos that you find stability in. Go out there outside of those conditions. If you love chaos, if you're the king of chaos, go to the refugee camp in Rohingya. Go to a place where people don't have food to eat, don't have water to drink. Go to the streets of India and sleep there.
if you like suffering. I mean, maybe, the cheat there is that, oh, but I'm not an explorer, or I'm comfortable with where I am. Well, if you're comfortable with where you are, then that's not very chaotic of you, and there's not much suffering in that. Or maybe there is, I don't know. Well, the general rule is just to do your best. And once you do your best, you can even do more than your best. You should detach from what you think. What you think is an illusion. And as much as I'm saying anything, I'm trying to support you to detach from the solidity of what you're saying or what you're thinking. For both friends here, one the Buddhist expert and one who's the master of chaos and suffering, you should detach from your views. God, speaking about Buddhism, well, let's speak about God. God is explicitly not what you think about God. God is not thoughts about God. Okay? And chaos is not thoughts about chaos, and suffering is not thoughts about suffering. So we have to learn to detach from our thoughts, to abandon our views, to abandon our positions as much as we can. And that's when you get into real chaos, and you can find out how comfortable you are there. And that's when you get to real relationship with God, right? Which is something that's kind of been lost in a lot of the schools of Christianity that you'll find in America. When we talk about relationship with God, we're talking about sainthood. We're talking about continuous prayer for hours. If you are worried about the meditation that the Buddha teaches, then spend more time in prayer. Spend more time inviting God and being with God and being vulnerable to the experience of God, which is beyond human comprehension, beyond your ideas about it. And as much as you can be willing to be with that which is beyond your ideas about it, you can say that you've met the Buddha and you're deepening your relationship with God. You practice foolishness more than anything else. You don't practice destruction. You practice to cling to the appearance of something being destroyed, but nothing is destroyed. It's just that you're practicing to believe that you're destroying something. It's just being a fool. And a lot of people like being fools. Whether they know they are a fool or not is dependent upon their degree of experience and generosity and putting themselves out there, being vulnerable to life. And when we don't like being, our foolishness being pointed out, it means that we're more than a fool than was even first thought. Firstly, don't let anyone tell you who you are or what you are. That's very foolish. And secondly, are you God? Are you Buddha? Are you the king of the universe? Are you a perfect human being? No. Then you're a fool. And it's okay to be a fool. It's okay to be perfect. It's okay to not have everything figured out. That's life. That's being with life. That's knowing life for ourselves. Hello, hello, hello. Knowing life for ourselves through our direct experience rather than knowing life through complicated thoughts, which are mostly nonsense, mostly just irrelevant. As long as you know that you are just throwing out ideas, you should be able to stop throwing out ideas. As much as you know that you can take the ball, the basketball, and just throw it against the backboard and it'll bounce around and make a noise and people will look at it, you should be able and willing and know the importance of not doing that. Because, that's not what the basketball court is really for, is it? There's nothing to get rid of. It's not about getting rid of anything. Everything already gets rid of itself. That's why the idea of you destroying things is just foolishness. Everything is impermanent. Everything is changing. Jesus seems like he was a good guy, nice guy. I would love to meet Jesus and, walk with Jesus and be compassionate towards people with Jesus. Practice deep meditation, thinking about Jesus. Peacefulness. I'm also answering some questions on Reddit, so that's why I thought to go live, because I saw that there's a good chance to share even more with the community as I answer these questions. And that's important to me, to bring us all together. Also, this is meant to be a kind of example of doing good deeds with mindfulness and detachment, more and more. More pain, more gain. That kind of idea. But what one of our friends was alluding to is that actually once we get into that, it can be quite pleasant. But it's not correct to see the pleasantness of it without the suffering. The suffering is there too. The lack of being satisfied, the urge, the drive, etc., the interest. But until we are fully enlightened, that will be there. So it's a matter of how we use that to support others and to support ourselves in deepening and expanding, in widening out, in brightening, in developing. We're not just showing up and consuming and doing the same old normal thing. This is beyond, to go beyond everything. Okay? This is a garden of durian trees, nourished by the feces of a community of well-minded practitioners on a vegetarian diet. Dare I say it, a vegan diet. Okay? Step by step. Mangoes, blackberries, raspberries, blueberries. I always forget blueberries. So it is a little bit kind of like an anime thing, but the situation is such that because it's concerned with the mind and how infinitely subtle the mind is, it's not uncommon at all to have situations where Yamcha thinks that he's at Goku's level, and we shouldn't to emphasize that too much, but it's important that we go out, we experience life, we put out a lot of interesting and worthwhile activities so that we can continue training and not be lost in our negativity or our arrogance. Hello, Hans. Great to have you here. Um, I probably won't have the time to visit this time, but in the near future, I'll be keeping it in mind and happy to have a call again soon. Aggression is a sure sign of a lack of spiritual power and a lack of spiritual progress for human beings. So see aggression as aggression, and don't rely on that. I wouldn't say that I decided to become a Buddhist. I would say that I was someone who was experiencing very great and profound suffering, and I was becoming more and more mentally ill, and I was taking substances, and I was doing many akusala, or negative activities that were harming myself and harming the people that I was in relationships with. And my mind was, I was also very isolated. I didn't have many relationships with people. And my mind was becoming psychotic and unstable and, deranged. At that time, I reached out to some kind of meditation center. I'm not sure what that place was. I'd be interested to go and visit that place, but I don't think I'd be able to find out what that place was. And I reached out to them to go and stay there and get some training. And it seemed like what they said was that I was too young to go and stay at that place. And they recommended me this place called Upaya Zen Center, which is a Buddhist, kind of secular Buddhist informed meditation center in the Japanese tradition. And I guess Buddhist, just Japanese Buddhist, which is different from the other forms of Buddhism. And I lied my way in because they asked me questions about my mental health, that if I told them what my mental health situation was, I wouldn't have been able to, they wouldn't have accepted me to go and stay at that center. But I did, and I had an interview, and, I shared as much as I could, and they accepted me, and I went to live there for 1 year. And that year of living in community, a sangha, with well-minded practitioners and also kind of priests, Buddhist priests, it reoriented my mind towards mindfulness and detachment and towards compassion. That really changed the direction of my life. And I don't know if I would have called myself a Buddhist up until, more and more recently. But it led me to be in a position in 2018 where I had an epiphany that all of the things that I was doing, all of the focuses that I had in my life were not leading me towards freedom or liberation or, enlightenment, whatever that I thought my life should be about. And I had a sense that the freedom was already there, but that I had to let go of all these things. And so I let go of all these things, and I had a great job and relationship, all that stuff. And at that moment, I found myself to be on the path and exhausting myself in taking in suffering from the world and trying to transform that suffering with chanting, with meditating, with donating to homeless people, and like taking in the karma or taking in the dharmas of mentally ill people and drug addict people in the streets of Seattle, because I was living in my car. And this practice, this experience seemed to be really good, for me, but I didn't have a place of refuge. So it was like I could never really rest. It was like I was always had this somewhat of a sense of anxiety, but that was pushing me to practice. But at a certain point, I was just, I wasn't able to really do things anymore. And there was a real, because I wasn't eating very much also, there was an experience where like my energy was starting to leave my body. It was like my energy was evaporating out of my body actively. And so at that time, I knew about a monk who I still know about, and I consider to be one of my teachers. Um, and so I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, can I come by and talk with you?" He said, "Okay, like tomorrow." And I went there, and I showed up to this temple, which there were no other Westerners living there. It was a monastery, and I was exhausted. My mind was kind of, I was really vulnerable. And I just went to him and I started crying and said, I told him what was going on. "Can I stay here?" And he said, "Yeah." So the first day, the second day, being there and resting, I felt rejuvenated. I felt empowered again. And I wanted to go back out to do my work that I was doing. So I was kind of going in and out, and then I think he was going to help me become a monk. I got lay ordination with him, and at a certain point, they had a schedule, and I was going to be more and more expected to follow that schedule in building up to being a monk. And I said, "You know what? They don't even compost here. How am I going to become a monk, or how am I going to follow a schedule? How am I going to stay at a place where they don't even compost?" And I was so prideful and arrogant at that time that was enough to get me to just leave. And then I went into the rock tumbler of having this mindset of exceptionalism to every place that I went to. It's like, "Oh, well, this isn't ideal. That's not ideal. That's not ideal." And it led me to being in Denver, Colorado, once again, completely exhausted and wasted. And also, like, there was this thing where there was like a pull to give up even more of my attachments. Like there was an unconscious pull. This is my memory. This is what I memorize that happened. I was completely alone. I was exhausted. I was running out of money. I was living in my car. That's all I had in Denver, Colorado, which there's tons of stuff going on there. And I was in the streets, but in my car. And I went into this Starbucks to go to the bathroom. And as far as I can remember, while I threw my keys like unconsciously into the toilet and then flushed it. It's very strange. And so then I was locked out of my car out front of this Starbucks in the middle of nowhere, which was Denver, Colorado. And anyway, I had AAA and I had a key in my glove box. And so I called my grandma and I was crying and I said, "I don't know what to do." She sent me some money, and I was in such a state I could really barely drive the car. And I arrived at my grandparents' home and settled down and didn't know what to do. And I saw a Wikipedia page that listed Buddhist countries. And for whatever reason, I developed this faith in Buddhism. And it said Myanmar, Thailand. And then I went there. And from there, it's just been a path of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha as best I can, and that's led me to here. Um, Imposter syndrome is kind of we're we're not busy enough applying ourselves in the ways that we can. And because of that, we're thinking about things that aren't necessary to think about, such as how do other people view me? Is this the right place for me? Am I being as good as I could be? You can't start being as good as you could be until you start doing as much good as you can do now, right? And sure, I've dealt with that. I've felt with that. It also has a lot to do with not living up to your own standard, and it takes time of exerting ourselves to find out what that standard is, right? So I feel it less and less now, but naturally you can feel that as the only white monk in a community of hundreds of you know Buddhist people that don't share your cultural background, but really support you to be a monk and to do what you're doing. If you can explain to your loved ones the intention behind what you're doing, then they should be able to understand it. And in having this kind of push or force to take care of that suffering, not only of yourself, but of your loved ones, there will be more energy for you to practice seriously. So don't be shy about renunciation, because renunciation is in accords with nature. And nature is powerful and reliable, and not something to be fearful of. It depends on the person. If you have a lot of experience with meditation, then meditation is the answer. If you have a lot of experience with being attached to your possessions or to money or to your time being under your control, then giving away that is the answer. Through generosity, donating, volunteering, serving. Sometimes, not all the time. Truth is not something. That's what makes it the truth. As a Buddhist, you can pursue romantic relationships. As a monk, you cannot. by moving to Thailand and seeking the help of Buddhist monks, I was able to ordain. Having a background of suffering and then a background of experiencing Buddhist practices as a way to alleviate suffering, I had the answer to when and why to ordain, which was in that moment. Step by step, and try to go to some 12-step meetings. You can also understand that it is not really that you are an alcoholic, but rather that there is a undeniable tendency towards drinking alcohol that you personally cannot control. So in that way, you can detach from the idea about yourself as an alcoholic, and then you can be more open to being vulnerable to not drinking, which is possible. And you should be more open to understanding and accepting that. Any questions or sharing from our friends here on YouTube? I think that the most harmful substances are concerned with the mind. So not so much about weed or alcohol, but definitely weed and alcohol were caused a lot of difficulty for me at a certain time. Alcohol being a kind of sedative and weed being a kind of destabilizer, and then like a fog machine in the mind, a cloud machine, being in a haze. But the real difficulties that I've faced in my life have been related to a lack of understanding of good and bad, a lack of understanding of cause and effect, and a lack of understanding that as much as there are powerful bad people, there are powerful good people, and that the powerful good people are infinitely more potent and also accessible than the bad people. Just a matter of taking those steps in a positive light. Main purpose to become a monk is to be free from suffering, to end suffering. everything. Use the word everything to widen out the mind, to brighten out the mind, to detach from all things. Plant a seed in the basis of your mind using the verbal thought, not someone, no self, not something. Not something, not someone, not somewhere, not some situation, not some experience.